Welcome to This Explainer. Today, we're objectively unpacking the sudden passing and the deeply complex political legacy of U.S. Senator Lindsey Graham. Whether you followed his every move for years or just caught his name in the headlines, there's no denying that his decades in Washington really helped engineer the global landscape we're all living in today.
The news of his death at 71, following a brief and totally sudden illness, caught the political world completely off guard. Now, before we dive into the fascinating details of his life, his massive career, and the global reactions to his passing, please take a quick second to hit like, share, and follow the channel. It really helps us keep bringing you these focused, deep dive explainers. To truly understand his monumental impact over the last couple of decades, we've broken things down into 4 chapters: a sudden passing, shaping U.S. foreign policy, the Trump relationship, and finally, legacy and global tributes. All right, let's jump right into Chapter 1, a sudden passing.
The sheer abruptness of this event was just stunning. It literally sent shockwaves through Washington. The timeline here is incredibly tight. Look at this. On Friday, Senator Graham is on the ground in Kyiv, actively conducting diplomacy with Ukrainian President Volodymyr Zelensky. Then, by Saturday evening, his office puts out a statement that he's passed away from a brief, sudden illness. There were absolutely zero known health concerns before he traveled, so this was a profound shock to everyone, both here at home and around the globe.
Moving right along to Part 2, shaping U.S. foreign policy. Now, Graham was definitely not a backbencher just waiting around. Serving as chairman of the Senate Budget Committee, he put himself right at the absolute center of U.S. foreign policy. He really viewed American power as this necessary force for global stability, and he constantly pushed for outcomes, especially in the war on terror, that he felt were absolutely essential for protecting our long-term national security. Honestly, understanding Graham is pretty much key to understanding the military posture the United States has taken over the last 20 years. His approach to military and diplomatic strategy was remarkably consistent, no matter who was in the White House. He was, by all definitions, a quintessential hawk. He backed the 2003 invasion of Iraq, he pushed for military action against Iran, and he fiercely opposed the Obama-era Iran nuclear deal. To him, projecting American power wasn't just an option, it was the only way to ensure stability. He deeply believed that a heavily armed, highly active military was the absolute best deterrent against global chaos. Because of that worldview, he fiercely opposed any sort of American retreat. Take a look at his reaction when the U.S. withdrew troops from Afghanistan in 2021. He didn't mince words at all, warning, "Jihadists all over the world are celebrating. America will be seen as weak." In his mind, stepping back just emboldened our adversaries. This wasn't just political rhetoric for the cameras, This was a core philosophy that defined his entire career and shaped how a huge portion of Washington views international relations. Okay, let's turn to Part 3, the Trump relationship. This is honestly one of the most fascinating political pivots in modern history. Over just a few years, Graham went from being one of Donald Trump's most vocal Republican critics during the 2016 campaign to one of his most unwavering allies. It's a dynamic that completely reshaped the modern Republican Party. Let's look at how that actually played out. Back on the 2016 campaign trail, the clash was intense. Graham didn't just disagree with Trump. He warned his party in the strongest possible terms. He famously called him a race-baiting, xenophobic religious bigot and said, "If we nominate Trump, we will get destroyed, and we will deserve it." It was a fiercely personal, highly publicized battle of words, and that is exactly what makes their later alliance so surprising. Now, the dynamic shifted massively during Trump's presidency, but then it seemed to fracture all over again. Right after the 2021 Capitol riots, Graham gave this highly publicized Senate floor speech where he seemed to just completely cut ties. He literally said, "Trump and I, we've had a hell of a journey. I hate it to end this way. All I can say is count me out. Enough is enough." And at the time, pretty much everyone assumed this was the absolute end of their political alliance. Yet, despite those incredibly sharp public words, the whole relationship pivoted once again. When the 2021 impeachment trial rolled around, Graham actually voted against convicting Trump. And as the cycle continued, he stepped right back into the role of a key backer, throwing his full support behind Trump's 2024 campaign. It's a real testament to Graham's pragmatic and, sure, controversial approach to political survival and influence. So you might be wondering, how did he justify this pivot? Well, in a pretty revealing 2023 BBC interview, Graham basically laid it all out. He acknowledged a dark side to the former president, but said he was sticking with him for tangible policy wins. He specifically pointed to the strict record on the U.S. southern border, the targeted killing of Iranian commander Qasem Soleimani, and the appointment of conservative judges. For Graham, getting those concrete, conservative victories across the finish line totally outweighed any personal friction. That brings us to our final chapter, Part 4, Legacy and Global Tributes. Right up until his final hours, Graham wasn't kicking back or taking a victory lap. He was deep in the mechanics of statecraft. While in Kyiv, he was actively working on a new Russia sanctions bill. His stated goal was to give a potential future President Trump the diplomatic and economic tools needed to end the war in Ukraine. It just proves that his intense focus on an aggressive foreign policy literally never wavered. And the global response to his passing was immediate. President Zelensky, who Graham had visited an astonishing 10 times since the full-scale invasion started, expressed deep sadness. He said, "America and the world have lost a determined leader." He really highlighted this profound bond that they forged right in the middle of a historic conflict. That exact same sense of loss echoed over in the Middle East. Israeli Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu called Graham a staunch supporter and one of Israel's greatest friends. He noted that Lindsey understood that the security of Israel and America are inseparable. It's a clear reflection of just how deeply his policies impacted the real-world geopolitics of America's closest allies. And bringing it all back home to domestic politics, former President Donald Trump succinctly honored his longtime, albeit complex, ally. Despite their absolute roller coaster of a history, from fiery clashes to staunch loyalty, Trump remembered him simply as a true American patriot. Senator Lindsey Graham was, without a doubt, a polarizing, pivotal, and undeniably influential figure. So here's the big question we're left with as we wrap up. Without one of its most vocal architects pushing that distinct brand of muscular foreign policy, how exactly will the global and domestic political landscape shift? It's a massive question, and it's one that is definitely going to define this next era of Washington politics. Thank you so much for joining me for this explainer.